So what does a congressman do and what does he not do? And that's a great question, and I would love to I would love to answer that. It actually speaks to sort of why I'm running, because I have been asked multiple times to run for local office, whether it's mayor, city council, county supervisor, state assembly, state senator, you name it, and I've had no interest at all. I've always gravitated to the federal level from the time I was a political science student in college, which I ultimately got my degree in. I was just drawn to the federal level. Maybe it's the patriot side of me where I just love this country, and I want to defend it, and I want to see it do well, and I'm fascinated by how other countries interact with one another and how different people groups build their societies and then interact with those around them. I just find that super fascinating. So I've always been drawn to the federal government. So people were always shocked when I'd say, listen, I don't want to run for the local office. And they would say, hey, well, but you're so good. We have so much to do in this area. And I said, that's fine. But first of all, I don't want to be a career politician. So I'm not starting at a local level and trying to work my way up to a federal level. I don't see it like that. I want to help at the federal level. So I'm going to answer that question. So there's a significant difference between federal duties from a governmental perspective and state and local duties. And as a side note, I'm a constitutionalist, which means I agree with the Constitution. I believe that government should be structured in the way the Constitution lays it out. But the thing about that is that the Constitution specifically says if it is not written in here, that power goes to the states. And so the Constitution is not a very big document. It's only a few pages, really, a couple dozen pages, whereas the Constitution of California is like 400 and something pages. The states have a lot of power. The local level has a lot of power, and I like that. I believe that every community should be allowed to carve out their way of life. And that's the beauty and the diversity of America. There's 50 different states. There's all sorts of different communities within each of the states, and that's how it should be. But as it pertains to kind of local mandates, we're in the midst of the pandemic, and I was having a meet and greet signing event, actually, because you have to get enough signatures to get on the ballot and all that. And I had so many people coming up to me saying, oh, you got to deal with got to get rid of these masks, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. That is not the role of a congressman. That is not what he or she does. That is a state level issue, or maybe a county level, or a board of education, or whatever, but it's not, yes, you do have the CDC, but that is not a mandate. That is guidance, and then those governors or the state legislatures or the county supervisors, they all put that stuff in place. As a congressman, you're focused really with, number one thing would probably be the budget. They do make up and approve the federal budget. So that is military funding, that's Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, all of the various, say, infrastructure bills, things like that. How are we going to spend the federal money that we have? That's Congress's primary role. And then with that, you work in conjunction with the president and trying to navigate trade with other countries and anything that has to do with a federal level organization. Congress has authority over that. But that in itself, the federal government's huge, and we have to try and work with the rest of the world through just the way things work with the economy and trade and immigration and all of that. That's a federal level deal, and that's what Congress is tasked with doing. But as it comes, with even, let's just say, education reform, that's a big one. I'm passionate about education reform. I'm passionate about school choice and things like that. But you know what? Ultimately, that's not a congressman's job either. That is a state level job. That is something the governor and the counties and the cities deal with. Now, from maybe a budget perspective, again, getting back to how do we spend the federal government's resources from a budgetary standpoint, well, then that's something I could look at and try and bring resources into the district. For example, on average, there's a California education budget. About 8 to 9% of the education dollars that are spent in this state come from the federal level. It's still not the 91 or 92% that's spent by the state of California, but there are resources that come from the federal government, and you can earmark that, for example, and they try and do it now, but I want to look into it even further to make sure that people that have these resources are doing what they're supposed to do. But you can say, we will allocate this amount of money towards education, but it must be used, like right now I think it must be used by, it must be used to develop areas that are underprivileged, for example, and that's great. That's what I think it should be used for. But that's about all you can really do from a federal level. You can't mandate education laws. There's a lot of people complaining about what's being taught in schools these days and all that. Totally get it, but it's not, again, something Congress does. That's at the state and local level. And what's interesting to me, just as kind of a funny thing, is that most of those people that would come and tell me that they want these, let's just say, mask mandates changed and they want the education stuff to change, generally is from the conservative side on the political spectrum, and yet they're coming to ask me for help at the congressional level. But generally speaking, those people are the same people that want a small federal government, and they want the power to be down at the local level. Well, they can't have it both ways. So you either want government oversight on everything, which is a bad idea, or you want to bring it down to the local level and let us as communities carve out the societies we want, as I mentioned before. But that entails then working with your local governments, your county governments, your state governments, as it pertains to things like mask mandates or education reform, or it could be a variety of things. Could be water rights, could be anything, housing spending. Again, all those things have some resources at the federal level that Congress is a part of distributing, but it is a small fraction.